Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the fakers gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Here on Making Luck, we're trying to really focus on self-improvement.
Yeah,
right? Last week we were talking about texting while driving, for your own safety and the safety of others. And this week we're talking about the dangers of smoking for your safety and the safety of others. And I understand it's a lot more difficult to stop smoking because that's a physical addiction and, that's a really tough thing to do. But at the same time,
there are challenges.
These are real issues.
These are challenges to not driving too, because sometimes somebody will call you out in the Discord,
and you have to respond.
Yeah, or
someone's in the Discord is like, Jake, why are you talking in the Discord while you're driving? And
you have to let them know. You see, if you scroll up a few.
Here, let me quote it. Now I'll just type it out again. It's fine.
Oh man, yeah. So
anyway, at Gen Con I played some games. We had a good time. Spirit Island, I'm a fan. Yeah. I also visited the Dominion tournament there.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I wasn't at the finals, but yeah.
Yeah, I have. I got to talk to some employees of RGG, the publisher, and there's some exciting things that I don't really want to make public yet because they're not certain. There's going to be some changes to the RGG's official tournament structure. It's going to be 3 players still. Sorry, that's never changing.
Ugh.
But I may find ways to get involved, and things can improve, and that's exciting. But it's still in the works. There's a lot that needs to be done on that. However, they did give me a whole bunch of base card bricks.
Nice.
Which I love because it helps me run tournaments. So I was really happy about that.
What are the base card bricks again?
Just the supply cards, the extra base card box that you can buy, the yellow box.
Oh, they give you a bunch of base set cards. Nice. Yeah, those are. If you run a tournament of Dominion, that's
you need
those
a lot
are the
of
things you're always short on.
Yeah, you need a lot of them.
So,
So there was that. I got to see a new world champion, so I'm now the former world champion. And the next game we play with physical cards, I will be going first. It's going to feel so good.
Yeah, and then from there on, we're randomly determining turn order.
Yes. I'll have a shot at going first. I'll have a shot at not going last.
Yes.
It's going to be so good. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's true.
But, for the first time, the Mexican champion won. So we have a world champion from Mexico. His name was Marlon. I have pictures. His English was not great. I didn't get an interview with him. I have a couple of interviews with a couple of people who were there. They're not going to be on this episode. I'm not sure that they're really great for the podcast, so I might just publish a separate video. But I want some time to go over and edit them, which I just haven't had time to do yet. So we'll probably address that in the next episode.
Congratulations, Marlon. I would say congratulations in Spanish, but I don't know that you don't speak English, so that would be racist.
I mean, he did speak some English, but he had a friend there to help have conversations, and he was distracted, and I didn't want to make him talk to a video and not his language. So
congratulations.
Is it felicitaciones? I think.
Congratulations, I believe
It's been a long time since I spoke Spanish, so it's really rusty. I used to be fluent. So
it's been about 3 seconds for me.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Nice.
So, so last episode, we talked a little bit about overdraw.
Yeah.
And the implications of that concept, what it is, and how you can use it to your advantage in games of Dominion.
Yeah.
And we played out a kingdom of it. We'll talk about that. And then we'll get into the meat of our episode, which is going to focus on inheritance.
Yep.
And we'll talk about a kingdom that has inheritance in it that we'll be playing.
It's going to be so good.
Yeah. That's what the next hour has in store for you on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
Yeah, so I wanted to, before we get into this kingdom, I wanted to just address 2 points that were based on some feedback we had since the last episode. The first point is I had made a comment last episode that getting hit by a minion attack is worse than getting hit by pillage. I want to make it clear I was not being serious in that comment.
Right. It feels like it because...
With my luck, sometimes, I get hit by a minion and it was worse than getting pillaged, and so I say that a lot. That's what that was. Just in case there was any confusion, because there was. And then also, I think I'd mentioned there were some cases where, like, you're going to find yourself overdrawing with a card like Scrying Pool, and I gave the example City Quarter and King's Court, where you're going to find yourself overdrawing by a whole bunch because you have extra copies of these cards in your deck, but it's still okay to build that way because you want extra copies to increase the chances you have a copy of that card in your starting hand.
Yeah,
right?
there's conditional overdraw that you build redundantly for.
Yeah, and I mean, those are a certain class of card, but I really feel like I missed a chance to talk about, like, Hunting Grounds and Royal Blacksmith. Like, those are cards that function sort of in a same way, where, like, you should build your deck to overdraw just knowing that you want that extra consistency. Hunting Grounds really likes to be trashed. Royal Blacksmith, not so much, and that's why it's not as good of a card.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I just thought I would mention those things because, like, there was some decent conversation, and enough people brought that up that I feel like I should mention it here.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So, you want to talk about a kingdom?
Yeah. So this is the kingdom that we have been playing with overdraw in mind, and part of the reason we settled on it is because the role of overdraw in this kingdom features fairly prominently. And you want me to go ahead and read it off?
Yeah, go nuts, man.
Alright, so this kingdom that we played has Fishing Village, Workshop, Cemetery, Duplicate, Magpie, Nomad Camp, Remodel, Villa, Margrave, and Trading Post. Once more for our audio-only listeners, the kingdom has Fishing Village, Workshop, Cemetery, Duplicate, Magpie, Nomad Camp, Remodel, Villa, Margrave, and Trading Post.
Yeah, so I think last time I advocated for a Remodel Workshop opening on a 4-3, and then I think on a 5-2 I said you want to open with a Trading Post. I'm gonna go back on that Trading Post. I think that after playing this game a few times, I don't think Trading Post is ever good.
I don't agree with that statement, but
Yeah.
I do agree with a lot of the reasoning behind it. So the thing is that you can make a case, I think, like, what Adam's saying is that Margrave is just a better card to buy.
You just always want a Margrave
In
over
every
Trading Post.
chance. In every opportunity. Now, I'm going to say that if you buy Trading Post early on, like as your first 5, and if that's before the second reshuffle, and you get to play it in a hand that doesn't get Margraved, then it sped you up about as much as the Margrave would have, but it's conditional, and if you do get Margraved, you're really sad on your Trading Post hand, and if it misses the shuffle, you're even sadder. So the Margrave is the safer card to buy to get a lot of value out of. The Trading Post potentially could speed you up a little more as your first 5, and when I say speed you up a little more, I mean that it propel you into the mid-game in a way that you have more treasures in your deck to buy more things. So,
Yeah, and I just think all of that's really bad, and I also think that it neglects the attack portion of Margrave, which I think is super devastating. So, like, I'm confident that he's wrong if he thinks Trading Post is ever good here.
Now, I will say that the Margrave is the safer play to get a lot of value out of. You could potentially get very slightly more value out of the Trading Post if things go just right, but the Margrave is also guaranteed value. So why is the Margrave so good and so guaranteed to get you value on this kingdom?
Because Margrave is busted.
Why in here in particular?
Well, it draws you a bunch of cards, and it undraws your opponent a bunch of cards.
Yeah, and so the thing is that it's also terminal draw, and there's no lack of village support here. If you draw dead with it, you can just get a villa and play it. There's Fishing Village, so you should have a surplus of actions anyway, and the attack is great, but also the concept of once you do have your deck in your hand, you can do some really great things with the workshops and the remodels, and the Margrave really gets you there.
Yeah, Margrave is important. It's the only way to increase your hand size other than Magpie, which is not really good for that. So, you want it.
Yeah.
And it's, it's just a really powerful card, so you want it.
So there's an interesting concept here in terms of the Margrave split, and in terms of who has more Margraves. Once you're going to get Margraved every turn at a certain point of the game. Like, at a certain point in the game, you just accept that you have 3 card hands to start off with. But, like, if your opponent has a ton of Margraves and you only have a couple, that doesn't necessarily mean he gets to play Margraves more often, because he's playing so many Margraves on you that you get to keep drawing and searching to find yours. So that was interesting. That the benefit that the Margrave gives your opponent is not trivial in terms of kicking off your turn.
I suppose. I mean, it's worth it, right? Because you want a billion cards.
Yeah, that doesn't make Margrave worse. It just means that, like, you can get away for longer with having fewer Margraves in your deck than you could if it was any other attack.
Sure.
Or any other source of draw, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true. I think in terms of gain and play, there's a couple of relevant things. In terms of overdraw, but it comes down to gain and play. That's the main way to take advantage of that overdraw.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 main things. So the first one is duplicate. You can gain multiple golds and then draw them. If you have a duplicate, it helps you gain multiple golds. A lot of times you're getting a gold off of playing a remodel, so duplicate helps you get a little more value off of that.
That's the only way to get the gold mid-turn, right? Is the remodel?
Yeah, it looks like it. So there's that thing. Also, there's a little bit more subtle of a gain and play trick you can do. So, like, I like the workshop remodel opening because it actually is pretty good for hitting 5. If the workshop and the remodel collide, you're hitting 5 because you can workshop, gain a villa, it goes to your hand and gives you an action, you just remodel it into a Margrave. And that's super great.
That's true. Yeah, I think that actually came up in one of our games.
It comes up in a lot of games. Like, that's one of the better ways you have of hitting 5. If they don't collide, you have some great options for getting cemeteries and thinning down super fast.
Yeah.
And you have this other thing that you can remodel into a Margrave.
Yeah, like, that's a big deal. I had advocated originally, instead of opening Workshop Magpie, I was going to open Workshop Remodel, I was going to open Workshop Magpie. And, like, the Magpie's good, like, it is, but the Remodel has some very specific utility here that is definitely not to be dismissed.
I would like to have played more games with this kingdom than I did. I am not convinced that Magpie is a good card for the deck. It probably is, but I want to try some without. There are a lot of different lines you can take to build this deck. I've managed to fall flat on my face many times, and I'm just really not sure what I could have done differently. Granted, it's Margrave, so like the game's going to be determined by who can play Margrave sooner, right? And maybe that was just it. But at the same time, like I'm ready to move on with my life. I don't know, I feel like my commentary on this kingdom is just not as good as normal, partially because it's super complex and super draw dependent, but also because Margrave can be kind of a pain.
There's a lot of reaction in this kingdom to what's going on. I will say that every single game that we played of it ended on a 3 pile. I didn't see provinces empty in this kingdom once. And I know some of the other members of our community, namely Wandering Winder and RTT, were talking about having played this kingdom out, and some other people have, I'm sure, too. Let us know if you have ever played this kingdom out and seen provinces pile before a 3 pile happened. I would guess it's not going to happen.
Seems unlikely. I think the overdraw lesson here is that draw is so important, and Margrave is so important, that, like, the way you build the deck is kind of easy. If you can put a Margrave in it, you just do it. And then if you don't, there's some other stuff that you think about.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can quickly add payload to the deck if you are drawing or overdrawing, and the fact that Margrave has the attack attached to it, like, these things just push you so far in that direction that it becomes very polarizing. Like, do I have 5 or more? I get a Margrave. And then once the answer to that question is no, maybe because the pile's empty or maybe because you don't have 5 anymore, then you start thinking about other stuff.
Yeah, now I will say that doesn't hold up 100% of the time, mostly because Ghost and Cemetery are a thing. Like, there are times when you don't get a Margrave so that you can use your turn to get a Ghost instead.
I'm, like, not convinced that, like, a Ghost is great here, but, like, I kind of wonder if Margrave is so powerful that you just say, well, maybe I'm not getting a Ghost this game, and then you're better off. I didn't try that. I wanted to. I mean, maybe you're right, but I want to try it.
Well, so my initial reaction would be Ghost is really good, and I want it, but I didn't think about that, and looking at the Kingdom, I can't immediately dispute that. That might be a thing that we need to talk about.
I mean, I think you're right, but I'm not convinced, and I want to try it out.
There's one more thing I want to talk about in this Kingdom, and more just to clarify something that we said earlier. We're talking about the trade. Adam thinks the trading post is bad all the time. I think it's probably worse than Margrave most of the time. There's a very specific reason for that. I don't know if we made clear, and that's because Workshop and Cemetery are in this Kingdom together. That is the only reason that the trading post isn't, like, necessary. Because, like, the idea is that instead of playing the trading post, you're playing a Workshop to gain Cemetery and thinning that way. Like, if that weren't the case, you'd be opening trading post all day.
If it was the only way to thin, then yes, you would be doing it.
Yeah, so, like, and, like, the other thing is that that's part of what makes Margrave so good here, too, is that one of the best thinning resources rewards a huge hand size.
Right.
And there's a gainer for it.
Mm-hmm. Srite. Yeah. So anyway,
we never bought Nomad Camp, and I think that's the only card that didn't play.
Rip.
So, moving on.
Rip in peace, Nomad Camp. All right.
So, did you hear? Speaking of segues, one of my relatives died.
That's really unfortunate, and I'm sure this actually happened.
But I did get their stuff.
Oh, like, you mean their estate?
No, actually, they helped me renovate my estate into something that I can host multiple people, like a village.
Ooh.
Okay, so we're talking about inheritance.
Nice. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
You want to tell us what inheritance does?
Sweet. Yeah, I'll do that. So, inheritance is from the Adventures expansion. It's a 7-cost event, and it goes like this. Once per game, set aside a non-victory action card from the supply, costing up to 4. Move your estate token to it, and then your estates gain the abilities and types of that card.
Yeah.
So you'd pick something 4 or less, and now your estates do the thing.
So, like, one thing I want to say is that this is one of those awesome Dominion cards that, like, when somebody is reading it for the first time, like, new players, really, I'd say all experience levels, the first time they read Inheritance, their eyes go wide, just because of how much it could potentially change, how like, unexpected it is of a mechanic.
I remember when this came up in playtesting, Adventures was the first expansion that I ever playtested for. And, you know, Donald was just, like, coming up with all of these crazy events once events were going to be a thing. Like, like, I don't understand how he can conceive of things like this. I mean, it's amazing, but, like, how did he come up with it?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Where did this come from? Yeah.
And, like, I remember having a lot of fun experience when I was playtesting. I imagine other people had them, you know, when they first were playing with the card. It's like, why did I just buy an estate on turn 7 for $6? Why did I do that? And then I remember one moment where I drew a hand of 2 estates, 2 coppers, and Oracle, and I was really upset. Because, like, man, I had a dud turn. And then I remembered, well, whoops, I inherited Throne Room.
Right.
And that's why I have 8 estates in my deck.
Yeah. Yeah, like, so Inheritance sees you potentially building a completely different way, which we'll get into when we talk about the card, but it's definitely a card I very much appreciate, just for the bold exploration of design space.
Yeah, like,
it's
a very unique card. It's a very unique effect, and, like, there's nothing like it, even close. There probably won't be anything like it again, or even close. And, I I appreciate that, and I really like cards with unique effects, especially when they're not awful.
Right.
Like Counting House.
Or Envious and Delusion.
Tell me how you really feel, Jake.
I'm not going to keep beating that horse.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
But But let's have a podcast about it. Let's try and parse this and figure out like, okay, well, how do you play with this bad boy?
Yeah, this is interesting. Like, we talked about, you read off the text of Inheritance, but like from Miles Up, what would you say it really does?
So it trashes your estates, and trashes is in quotation marks.
Giant quotation marks.
Yeah,
like the quotation marks are in like 3 points bigger font than the rest of the text.
Yeah. So it thins those estates, and it gains cards. It gains good cards to your deck. So it's thinning and gaining. And then it also makes future copies of that card that you want to gain cheaper and better. So they're worth a point.
So here's a question that's like purposely vague and kind of unanswerable. What would you say is the main purpose of Inheritance? Is it to get rid of the estates or to gain the action cards that you're turning the estates into?
I would say more often the gaining is more important than the thinning.
So I would have said exactly the opposite, which is
Nice.
the interesting part. But that's the point, is that like we no matter what your mental model is of thinking about this, the two are inseparable, and like getting rid of the estates and gaining the cards, that's like trying to talk about trade, the card trade that we did an episode earlier on, as something that either trashes cards or gains silver. It doesn't really do either of those. It turns the card into the other thing. So that's just conceptually different than just getting rid of it or gaining the card that you...
That's why Rats is a bad card.
Yep.
It's why Transmute is a bad card, too.
Oh,
You have to look at the whole thing and see what it all does.
Right. So, like, when you're getting Inheritance, like, a lot of the time, it's like, for me, it's, can I pay $7 to get rid of all the estates in my deck?
Right. I mean, if I have $7 and I have 3 estates in my deck, I'm probably getting an Inheritance. That's really good.
And when he says probably, I think that's an understatement. It's like,
I'm almost certainly, like, maybe there's nothing I can inherit, or maybe I can win the game. That's probably about it. Inheritance is really good when you can get that full complement of, trash 3 estates, gain 3 good cards out of it. So, do that. If there's no estate thinning and you hit 7, well, inherit something. It's really good.
in my mind, there are, when you're looking at this at a board that has the card Inheritance on it, and you're deciding, like, how important is Inheritance? How good is this going to be? Should I go for this, quote unquote? There are 3 factors that you want to be putting through your mind. 1 is, how quickly can I get the Inheritance, like, relative to what else I'm doing with my deck? Like, in terms, maybe trashing the estates, for instance. 2, is there a really good way to trash the estates super early so that the Inheritance maybe gets less good because I could deck build by getting the estates out instead? Or 3, how good is the Inheritance target?
Sure. I mean, Inheritance trashes and it gains, right? And these
Yeah.
are both things that I care deeply about at the start of the game.
Yes.
And I care less deeply about as the game goes on. Mm-hmm. So it stands that the earlier you can inherit, the better off you're going to be. Of course, I mean...
And the more you get out of your Inheritance, the better off you're going to be because you got more.
Sure. I mean, so you want to inherit early, and if I'm gonna have to put a bunch of cards in my deck just so I can hit 7, so I can get these estates out that maybe I don't want, then that's a pain in the tuchus, and maybe I should rethink my life.
Yeah, that's part of the beauty of Inheritance's design, is that, like, it gives you this amazing effect of, like, turning these estates into something else, but it sets it at a price point that's really hard to hit if you have estates in your deck.
Yeah, that's crunchy, and I like crunchy.
Yeah.
That's certainly difficult. So there is a natural synergy with cards that help you hit those spiky price points, and I'm looking at Baron and Deathcart, and then Gear and its whole family.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at these cards because you can open with them. So, like, all of these cards give you a shot, well, maybe not Gear, but, well, yes, Gear. It's a lot more narrow.
Yeah, kind of Gear.
It's more narrow, but
Sure.
these cards give you a shot at hitting 7 a lot earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that list just a teensy bit in terms of, like, if you could get 5 early, Tactician or Swamp Hag definitely help. And Hermit Madman can get you there as well.
Well, I mean, I was going to say Silver,
Silver's
So silver
okay.
actually helps you hit 7 a lot, and I think it's better than those, and that's because they cost 5, right?
Now here's the thing. I agree that silver helps you get to high price points, and if you tell me that silver helps you hit 5, I'm on board. But if you're gonna tell me that silver helps you hit 7 while you have 3 estates in your deck, I'm gonna look at you sideways.
No, it helps. Silver helps you hit 10, dude.
But no, but it helps. It makes you progress, but not in a meaningful way. Like,
wait. That way is meaningful, Jake. It means a lot to me. Silver is a very important card.
If you have, let's assume you have 3 estates in your deck.
Tres estates.
If you put a silver into that deck,
yeah,
you have a
way closer to 7 than you were before.
You're closer. I wouldn't say you're way closer because you're still gonna have to probably hit 7 with 4 cards, and that means they would like all have to be silver if you're going that route.
Yes, silver is amazing for that. Like whatever else you're doing, it's probably gonna require the support of a silver to get you there.
What I'm saying is that if you are going to be relying on silver, and while you have 3 estates in your deck to help you hit 7, you need a better plan.
Okay, if you're relying on silver
to help you hit 7,
that's not great. Okay. Now, if there's no way to get the estates out, maybe this is the best you can do. Inheritance can still be good.
Right. What I'm saying is that
this is not good.
You should try to trash the estates instead. I know that inheritance and trashing estates aren't mutually exclusive, but like if your only means of hitting 7 early is going to be silver, if there's no spiky support from the kingdom, you should really, instead of like building to this inheritance, you might even end up ignoring inheritance and just getting the estates out of your deck.
For sure. I mean, if there's no way to get the estates out, you're going to be hitting 7 a lot later. If there is a way, hitting 7 sooner and then adjusting what you're going to do based on some other factors is probably the way to go. So, yeah, what are those other factors? I think it has a lot to do with if you're limited on gains.
Sure.
So, like, let's say that you're really pinched on gains. If I've trashed my estates and I'm pinched on gains, then I have to spend a buy on inheritance, and then I have to start buying these estates. And so that value of these good cards that my estates are going to be, and I can buy them for 2, like, that doesn't matter because my gains are tight anyway.
And this is, of course, assuming that, like, you've gotten some estates out of your deck before you got to this point.
For sure.
Yeah. Because, like, I mean, if he's in that position and he has the 3 estates, then, you know, it's a high-value buy, the inheritance.
Well, yes, for sure.
Yeah. Like, what I'm reminded of here, and maybe this is an oblique association, but we talked a little bit about in the coffers episode, so a user had, or a listener had asked you, when do you spend the coffers versus saving them? And one of the things you said was, well, typically you want to spend these resources to make your deck better. And you don't want to hold back your deck just to save up for something later when making your deck better incrementally helps you get there faster. I look at that the same way with keeping estates in your deck to make your inheritance better. Like, you typically don't want to keep the estates in your deck, which will slow down your deck building, just to get a better inheritance later on. You want to build
way too greedy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just basing your plan off of, well, I'm going to get lucky and hit 7.
And if your plan is to get lucky, you need a better plan.
Yeah. So, that's a pretty good way of putting it. So I think the big question left for me is, what do I inherit?
Yeah. So what you inherit is actually tied into, for me, like a situation that you're looking at. Inheritance.
Well, right. It depends on a lot. And so I think anything we say here without the context of a kingdom, golly gee, if only we had a kingdom to talk about. Oh, hey, we'll do that later.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can talk about some abstract things, but, obviously think about the situation you're in.
Yeah, there are 2 questions. Like, one of them is, which card in this kingdom do I want, like, a bunch of? Which one of these do I, like, most want a big mass of this card? And then there's another question that you might ask, which is not necessarily the same one, which is which card do I want 2 or 3 of right now?
Yeah. So I think in both cases, the answer is going to be more often than not a non-terminal card.
Yeah. A lot of the time.
So like normally you want a lot of them because you can play them all, right? And you, if you still have estates in your deck, normally that's going to disrupt your deck a little less, assuming you haven't built for it. So, if you build for it and obviously look at the situation. But, like, you can also, you can capitalize more on the idea that they're cheaper to pick up because you still want to continue to put more of them in your deck, right? If I add 3 terminals to the deck, then, that's fine. It may help me immediately, but then I may not want to continue to spam more of them immediately, so I'm losing a little bit of value there.
Definitely. The strong majority of cases is going to be a good inheritance target is going to be one that's non-terminal. But one of the reasons that I really feel the need to distinguish those two questions you're asking, what do I want a bunch of over the course of the game versus what do I want 2 or 3 of right now, is that a lot of the time your inheritance target is better off, being payload, even if that is terminal.
For sure.
What I'm remembering back to a league match of mine that I posted on YouTube, and I bought Inheritance, and I set it aside and named Horse Traders when I could have named Scheme. And one of the people in the YouTube comments said, why didn't you just inherit Scheme? That seems so much better. And, like, in a vacuum, yes, the Scheme is a better inheritance target than Horse Traders because it's non-terminal, but the context was that I was already drawing my deck every turn. I didn't need the schemes. I needed payloads. So, like, and here's the other important part. I wasn't planning on buying more estates. So it didn't matter that I didn't want 15 or 8 Horse Traders in my deck because I had 2 estates in my deck. Yeah. And it was better to get 2 Horse Traders than 2 schemes.
Yeah, a lot of times you're better off with just doing something better now.
Yeah.
As opposed to holding out for something better later.
And I think that'll usually come back to something Adam mentioned earlier, which is how tight are your gains. Like, can you make use of this ability to get this card for 2?
Right. Another thing, so, certain cards are really great to inherit, certain cards are not really great to inherit, and there's a couple of gotchas. First is, if you inherited Pearl Diver, don't just spam Pearl Divers. Like, remember when Great Hall was a card? You don't just keep buying those. You're not making your life easier. Maybe inherit them to get the estates out of your deck, so to speak, but
sure.
Don't do that. I mean, if you're going to inherit something that's just to thin the estates, don't keep buying, right? There's a couple of little rules interactions that have to do with inheritance. So, like, let's say there's inheritance and Lost Arts in the game.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
You can't put your Lost Arts token on the estate pile because it's not an action supply pile. But if I put my action pile on Scout and then I inherit Scout, then my estates don't get that bonus. And this goes for any of the tokens that you put on a pile.
Yeah, in other words, your inheritance token is a special type of token, and there is no way for other tokens to interact with that in any way.
With the current published tokens, that is the case, yes.
Yes.
So, and that's because those Lost Arts tokens and stuff, they care about the pile, and the estate pile is a different pile. So if you're parsing the card, that's why the rules work that way. Another couple of gotchas is Outpost. I know Outpost costs 5, but maybe you get it to cost 4 and you can inherit it. Well, if you inherit Outpost, it don't work.
Wait, what?
Because Outpost says if this is the first time you played an Outpost this turn, and if you play an estate, that's not an Outpost.
What?
Client has this wrong, by the way.
I had no idea about that.
But and the same thing happens for Crossroads. If you play an estate that you've inherited Crossroads, Crossroads says if this is the first time you've played a Crossroads this turn. Estate is not Crossroads. It gains the abilities and types, but it does not gain the name of the card.
Wow.
So, like, that kind of thing doesn't work. Maybe you want to do inherit Crossroads anyway, but you probably want to put, like, a couple of real Crossroads in the deck, or else you're never going to get those actions.
That is so weird. I actually did not know this clarification.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So just be a little be a little careful about those things. Remember that, something that specifically references the name of its own card. And I think it's just Crossroads and Outpost. Don't get screwed by that. And also the tokens, they care about piles. Estate is a different pile. Don't get screwed by that.
There's another really bizarre one that's Gladiator with Inheritance.
Bizarre? No, Bizarre works fine. Just play a highway.
There's another quite strange one.
Oh, okay.
It's the interaction between like Inheritance and Gladiator.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you set something aside, if you set something aside and your estates are that thing, and you reveal a state with your Gladiator, the only way your opponent can block it is if they inherited the same thing and they have an estate that is also that thing, because like once you do that, it creates this weird Twilight Zone state of being for your estates. That's like they're
gladi estates.
Yeah, they're neither estates nor are they the action. They are something in between. Yes, and so if you reveal them,
it's like you put both the cards into one sleeve and then that's it, right?
Yeah, it's like Mystic Veil.
Just like that.
Yeah. So that's a weird one. The other thing, and this isn't so much a rules clarification, more of an impetus for a deck you may want to build one day. You are able to inherit Sir Martin of the Knights pile, and it turns all of your estates into knights.
Yeah, I got a lot of Sir Martins running around.
Now, I will say,
it's kind of creepy.
If knights are really good in that game, that's actually probably super important. Because like if there's the opportunity,
the nightmare.
The nightmare or the nightlock, whatever you want to call it, the doomsday, if you will.
It's the nightmare.
Yeah, the nightmare. If there's the opportunity for that, and one player has access to this other knight's pile, that player has a huge advantage. But like that's gonna come up in like one every so many million games.
Making Luck, an Edge Case podcast.
Yeah, we need those.
Yeah, so what are some really good things to inherit that actually work?
Oh yeah, or were we talking about those?
So if I'm looking at things that are good value, I'm looking at 4 costs.
Sure.
Because usually they're better cards, and Inheritance doesn't care as long as it costs 4 or less. So, and I actually went and looked through the entire list of all these cards, and like all the really standout ones, they cost 4. Imagine that! Good cards cost more. So, Ironmonger.
Yes.
Super great independently because it has both the action type and the card type if you reveal an inherited Ironmonger.
That's a super strong enabler because it both draws cards and gives you actions at that point. It's
also, Ironmonger's a really good card.
Yeah, just in general. So like that's probably the strongest inheritance target.
I would say so too, yeah. I think Advisor is really good.
Very close second, yeah.
Advisor is great when you have a ton of them, and also when you don't really have that many bad cards in the deck. So if you're getting rid of your bad cards, replacing them with good cards, and those good cards are Advisors because your deck can support it. This is a really good situation, and it's also great to be able to just have this huge number of Advisors, so you have access to a second pile of Advisors. It's really easy to pick up and gives you points. So there's a natural synergy there.
Yeah.
I guess Shepherd's okay. I mean, the thing is, like, if I play a Shepherd estate and I discard another estate...
Like, that estate could have also been a Shepherd.
Like, that's fine, I guess. It's better than if they were estates, but, like, you gotta be really careful with this. Shepherd...
That's a weird deck to build and a weird deck to play.
Shepherd's just not as good as a lot of people think it is. It's solid. Solid card. But, just be careful. 6 out of 10. Solid card. It's actually solid like the state of matter. Solid.
I haven't budged from 4, but out of 10. But
I haven't budged from 6.
But like, yeah. I mean, so I think like inheriting Shepherd deserves almost a special mention, even though it's an edge case, just because like you design that kingdom around like Shepherd being a pretty decent inheritance target.
So and I put a lot of inheritance targets.
Well, yeah, right. If you make Shepherd your inheritance target, it's a really weird deck to play. You have some hard decisions to make every turn.
Right. The other big consideration there is the fact that you're gonna have pasture, and so you want to spam estates because there were 2 points each now instead of 1 if you keep that pasture around.
That's the thing, yeah.
So what you don't want to do is allow the other guy to inherit Shepherd and then get the entire estate pile. Because now his deck is actually good, and he has like 24 points before he starts greening, and his deck greens really well.
It's kind of weird.
So don't let that happen.
It's kind of weird when we talk about needing to contest estates, but it can happen with inheritance in the game.
Yeah, it usually does. I mean, if inheritance is good, other people are going to go for it.
If inheritance is good and gains aren't tight,
Right. Gains not being tight helps inheritance. That's a thing.
So there are some other synergies that are not necessarily good inheritance targets, but gel with the inheritance, with a deck that's enabled by inheritance.
Okay.
And that's anything that you want a lot of estates with. So I'm thinking about Baron or Crossroads or Silk Road, and I'm not saying that those are automatically turned on by inheritance and they can be your strategy, but they can push you in a certain direction of deck building.
So let me clarify something, and this is extremely important. Okay? These cards have synergy with inheritance. This is true. And I know you can't inherit Silk Road, so you can't fall into that trap. But
you could try.
You don't necessarily want to inherit the Baron. You don't necessarily want to inherit the Crossroads.
Yeah.
It just means they work well in the deck together. So if there's some other good card that's good to inherit, it's okay to inherit that thing and then buy Barons or buy Crossroads. This is fine. In fact, in many cases, that's much, much, much better.
Yeah,
Baron can gain the estates, and then the estates are good because they're estates and they're not Barons.
Yes, there is a very, very important reason that we're talking about these separately from earlier when we talked about good inheritance targets.
Just good non-terminals that do a good thing, those are great inheritance targets. And that's way better than actually inheriting the Baron. Now, Baron inherits... Baron gains estates. I love estates. Do that. I've seen so many people just Baron inheritance. I inherit Baron, and now their deck is bad. Don't do that.
Yeah, so we've gone into a lot of specific advice on how to utilize inheritance, and we touched on this before, but there is one tip I want to leave you with, one sort of closing thing I want to reiterate, and that is don't be afraid to ignore inheritance.
Trashing estates is great.
Yes, inheritance can be fantastic in certain situations, and we've gone into those and how to capitalize on them, but I really want to stress that that's not every situation, and if you get to a point where you just hit 7, don't just auto-buy inheritance because you can, and it's been good before. Very carefully consider, is this the best deck I could be building? Or is this the best way to get started with whatever my win condition is?
Yeah, estates without inheritance are bad.
Yeah.
And if you can get rid of them before you hit 7, a lot of times you're favored that way. And then a lot of times it's just not worth it to go for it, especially if your gains are tight, or maybe there's just not something you want to inherit and spam.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And the other thing is trashing a bunch of estates and then getting inheritance is also sometimes fine.
Yeah, you just need to, when you have 7, think about what inheritance does for you. Mm-hmm. And, when you have the context of a kingdom, it's a lot easier to do that calculation.
Yeah.
And if I have one estate left because I didn't trash them all, and I can get a few more pretty quickly, very good. But you're not going to find yourself in that situation. Maybe you were hoping to get inheritance, didn't work out, and time has passed it by.
Yeah,
inheritance gets a lot worse later in the game, so maybe it's too late. And that's okay. Sometimes life doesn't work out the way you want it to. And,
we may or may not do an episode on this too, but, I think you could apply that maxim to pathfinding as well.
You can apply that maxim to any card that's, good.
Sure. Okay. That's true. I'm just... I associate inheritance and pathfinding in a lot of ways. But.
Yeah. They both are, single word events, and the word has a lot of letters, and they cost a decent amount of money, and they have a token.
Neither of them have the letter E in them. So, speaking of the context of a kingdom, we have one for you, and it's going to have inheritance in it. And so we're gonna be playing it out over the next week, and
it says event on the card.
And we are going to try to evaluate the role inheritance does and doesn't have. We purposely chose a kingdom that we weren't sure off the bat whether or not we were going to buy Inheritance. So,
yeah, I'll read these bad boys.
what does that have in it?
Yeah, sweet. So we have University, Chariot Race, Lookout, Ironworks, Nomad Camp, Capital, Charm, Duke, Groundskeeper, Expand, and you guessed it, Inheritance. One more time for our audio-only listeners. University, Chariot Race, Lookout, Ironworks, Nomad Camp, Capital, Charm, Duke, Groundskeeper, Expand, and Inheritance.
Ooh,
Snapperoo.
this kingdom. Man. So, one of the comments you made is like, part of what I like about this kingdom is there's nothing good here.
There's no draw.
Like, yeah.
And
So-
that sucks.
Yeah.
So there's no draw. I look at the cantrips and what they
Yes.
can do for me. And I'm seeing Groundskeeper and Chariot Race.
Those are two potentially high-value cantrips.
So
and
if I wanna-
potentially nothing-value cantrips.
Yeah, so if I want to do some shenanigans, that's where I'm looking for. Those shenanigans are going to revolve around Chariot Race and Groundskeeper. And if I'm not going to do shenanigans, what are my options? I'm seeing Duke. It's really good. What do I see the sports Duke? I see Ironworks. I see Charm, maybe. I see Capital. I mean, that's pretty decent. Does Inheritance enter into that equation? What can you inherit? Chariot Race?
You could inherit...
Ironworks?
Inheriting Ironworks is fine.
Seems decent
'Cause
for
you can-
Dutchy Duke. You build up a little bit, you hit 7, you inherit Ironworks, you go to town, man!
Well, I mean, even if you don't plan on doing that, inheriting Ironworks, like, is probably fine, like,
Yeah, it's great.
just by itself, because, you know, you can inherit you can Ironworks the estates, which are now non-terminal, draw a card, and get you...
Yeah, you
estates,
can you can silver flood really easily because if the $1 helps you hit that price point,
Yeah.
you just grab the silver. If it doesn't, just grab another estate. It gives you a card in action, and maybe you draw something cooler. Like, it's pretty decent.
And then there's this opposing deck type that might counter it. May or may not. So, like, there's this possibility you brought up of ignoring Inheritance, getting the estates out of your deck really quickly with Lookouts and Coppers, getting a University to build up with Chariot Races and Groundskeepers, and getting a bunch of them, and now just having this insane scoring potential and maybe some Chariot Races. Like, the Chariot Races are really good against a deck that has a bunch of estates because 3 is more than 2. Math.
But hold on. Don't be ridiculous, Jake. 3 and 2 are the exact same number. Stop lying.
Sorry.
Okay. As long as you're sorry.
But you do win the Chariot Race, even if not mechanically, you win it in spirit.
Yeah.
And you do get the point token and the coin as well. So, that's definitely a thing you can do. And, like, the other thing is that the Duchy Duke slug is potentially pretty good here.
It's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points, and it's got Groundskeeper support.
I was thinking this Groundskeeper deck, you get super thin, you get a uni to help you gain a bunch of Groundskeepers, and then, like, at that point, you inherit Chariot Races, and you just chow down on Chariot Races with a bunch of Groundskeepers in play for, like, 3 or 4 turns and try and get, like, 80 points.
Yeah, like, that's not
Uncontested.
impossible.
I could see that doing some damage. And,
Right.
And I don't think these strategies gel very well.
No.
So, like, I think it's hard for Duchy Duke to contest Groundskeepers, and I think it's hard for Groundskeeper to contest Duchy Duke. It's hard for Groundskeeper to contest Duchy Duke because you don't want those stop cards. It's a big deal because there's no draw.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
hard for Duchy Duke to
And
contest Groundskeeper because,
and the-
like, you want a big deck, you're not going to see the Groundskeeper very much. It's hard to justify it when I can buy a Duchy or a Duke that's eventually going to end up netting me, like, 10 points at the end of the game.
Now, I had pointed out that, like, maybe this Duchy Duke deck can use Charm to pick up a Duchy and a Groundskeeper at the same time, but then you
That's not crazy, but...
It's not crazy, but you pointed out you have to hit 5 with and not play the Charm before you play the Charm. So, like,
Yeah.
that's hard.
It's hard. I mean, you probably... It's tough. I mean, I might get a Charm if I hit 5 somewhat early on. That's the
Yeah.
thing I might do, especially if I'm aiming to hit 7, get Inheritance, and then go to town.
Now, the other thing we haven't talked about is Capital. And I think Capital has 2 roles in the kingdom. One is that, remember we were talking about how inheritance is good when you can get it early. To get it early, you need to spike big points. Capital looks tasty for that.
Yeah.
So like capital getting one early can definitely get you that tasty 3 estate inheritance you've been lusting after in your sleep.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that capital could do is help you get an early expand if that's your jam. And then the expand helps you turn those estates into fivers. Those might be duchies or groundskeepers or what have you. So, like, that could potentially help either of those decks that we were talking about.
So I'm less warm on expand. I would prefer like a nice charm gain session rather than expand, but you're gonna really want a thin deck to have some hope of that happening. Capital's just good in a deck like Duchy Duke to help smooth out price points.
So, what's your opener here?
Man, I still haven't really decided what strategy I like more.
And do both of them use a lookout?
I don't think I'd get the lookout if I was going for Dukes.
Oh, man.
My money
I know,
says
but, like,
thinning is winning. If it's close in my mind, I just go with the thinning. So I would open Potion Lookout, aim to grab a University, get second, maybe even, well, not a third lookout.
So, like, if you don't get at least 2 lookouts, the Chariot races go from being a cute thing you could go for to being a threat. Like, if you have the coppers in your decks and you can't, like, thin them really efficiently, Chariot race isn't just, like, an innocuous little thing your opponent might be doing. It's like, it's a legitimate threat that they'll score too many points for you to deal with because you have coppers in your deck.
It's gonna score points.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna hit a copper sometimes, and it's gonna score points.
And, like if they have
10 points. Maybe.
So, like, let's go through this situation. Like, let's say you don't get the lookout, or you only get one, and I do the thing that I always tell people not to do, which is get a ton of Chariot races. I just need that one turn where you have a copper on top of your deck, and, like, even if I play them, like, and then I get, like, 5 points off of that if I play 5 Chariot races, if that happens.
It's a lot of points.
That's hard to come back from.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. Yeah, both strategies. I think maybe Lookout might be obligated by the presence of Chariot race.
Well, I mean, that's what I said, so sure. I guess I'm going to agree with you on that one. I mean, I'm not going to count Duchy Duke out of here, but yeah, that's what I think. If I was going to go for Dukes, I'd probably get Ironworks and Silver. Would I get a Nomad camp and try and hit 5 early? I don't think so.
No, that seems...
I just don't see the point.
Seems weird, yeah.
Just get a whole bunch of Silvers, get an Ironworks, get more Silvers, get like a Charm, maybe 2.
Yeah,
and
the
hope
only...
to hit an early 7.
I mean, like, you could, in some universe, if you're playing big money, you could get a Nomad camp, and that's fine. It's a little better than a Silver, I guess.
Sounds sad, though.
Yeah, like, okay, so does just straight up big money slugging have a shot here? I want to say no.
Well, I mean, that'll just lose to Duchy Duke.
Well, right, they're slugging with the Duchy Duke.
Oh. You said big money. Since big money is such a really well-defined term.
I'm talking about buying a bunch of treasure cards and getting Duchy Duke and Province.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, that has a chance against these things that we're talking about?
I think it has a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, I said I would go for the other thing, but I'm not counting that out.
All right. Well, let us know in the comments how you would play this kingdom and what you think is going to be really strong here.
Yeah. I can't wait for Wandering Winder to be like, Duke? You will lose to that, and then he'll just wipe the floor with me playing Duke.
Yeah.
It's going to be so amazing.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all I had to say on this kingdom. Remember that smoking is bad for you. And
Yes.
it can be bad for the people around you. I don't necessarily know.
Drink plenty of water.
Oh yeah.
Most people don't drink enough water, and you should do that because it's good for you.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
If you like the podcast or if you don't like the podcast, you should tell us about it. If you're listening to this podcast, we certainly want to know
Yeah. If you don't like the podcast, we'd prefer you tell us why, too, so that we can improve that. If you just tell us, I don't like the podcast, well, I guess that's better than nothing. We'd prefer you said that and not nothing. But we'd also strongly prefer some constructive criticism.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in touch with us, you can go to adamhorton.com, and you can go to the blog there. There'll be a link to the blog. There's a whole bunch of pages. It's got our contact info. It's a link to the YouTube channel where this podcast is also published, where we publish supplemental videos where we play these kingdoms. There's a forum there. You can give us feedback there. There's a link to a Discord server. You can give us feedback there.
Yep.
You can give us feedback in all the places that you can possibly think of, and all of them
hit us
are
where it
listed
hurts.
there. That's right. We would really like to hear from you, and we hope you continue to listen to the podcast. If you have suggestions for episode topics you want us to cover, let us know, and we'll probably do it. And if we were
have in the past,
if we were gonna do that anyway, a lot of times we get suggestions for an episode that was already on our list, and what that means is we do that episode sooner. Like we got a request on Overdraw. It's like we've been wanting to do this episode. Let's do it now. So let us know what you want. We care about you, which is why we're telling you not to text and drive and buckle your seatbelt and all that stuff.
He's glaring at me.
I mean, I really wish that. I just feel like an idiot. I'm sitting here, like, telling these people not to do it, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing it. It's okay. Adam's a noob.
I didn't say any of that, and I don't talk like that. I don't talk like that.
That's exactly what he sounds like.
Yeah. I almost forgot the raffle. If you win this raffle for the next week, Adam will buy your Gen Con pass for 2019.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Have a great luck.
Maybe Origins?
And we will see you at Gen Con.
I'm probably not going to be at Gen Con.
Making Luck, a Dominion podcast. I appreciate it, Lexi. You're a good one. You're a good woman.
Woman. There are a lot of words I would use to describe my dog, but woman.
She's a woman, right?
I mean, doesn't woman imply human? Is that a thing?
Google woman.
I'm doing it.
What does woman mean?
I'm going to Google woman definition.
Merriam-Webster.
No, not Merriam-Webster. They are garbage. Oxford, if anything, or Wikipedia.
Merriam-Webster's the English standard.
They suck.
What do you mean they suck?
Oxford is better.
Merriam-Webster Collegiate. That's the English standard. That's what you go by. Like if two dictionaries contradict, Merriam-Webster Collegiate is the accepted authority.
Dictionary.com.
That comes you should just skip the middleman and go to Merriam-Webster Collegiate. An adult female. Either way, it looks like you're right. Well, wait. What does person mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that means human.
Distinctly. Okay, get to person. Search for person. Human. Okay. All right. So Lexi, I'm sorry, you're not a woman, but you're still very important to me.
Important enough that you're gonna not text while driving? Because I don't think
Lexi cares about that.
I don't think you're gonna stop.